if you could pick one case out of the three, what would it be? OJ, R. Kelly, or Diddy?
Oh my gosh.
And you know who you got to back.
Oh my gosh.
Who you backing?
Do you know what? I'll just be honest.
Right, boom. Here we are again on another podcast. How are we starting? My name's East. I'm here with the Mandem.
Yes.
To my right, we got
King.
Big King. To my left, we got
Jamal, JK.
Jamal, JK. And we got a special guest today. His name's Christian Weaver.
Yes.
A little bit about Christian Weaver. He's the author of the book, The Right to Protest, a guide to getting your voice heard.
They show the cover of the book. So you can,
Boom. Yeah. Is that the camera?
Your right to protest.
Your right to protest. And
What
also,
what does it say in the red?
understand it, use it.
Use it. Okay.
Yeah. And then we also got The Law in 60 Seconds, a pocket guide to your rights. All right. Christian Weaver is also a barrister. He was in a case that some people might know with a guy named Ayab Isaac. Awabishak.
Yeah, a little boy called Awabishak. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah, I butchered that.
I saw the little child, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah, that's
I
right,
saw your
that's
interviews on the BBC, little snippets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, matter of fact, before we get into too much of that, just give us an intro about yourself and what you do, your profession.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and start off by just saying I'm happy to be here. Thank you for finding time to have this conversation. My name's Christian Weaver, barrister, human rights barrister, working inquest and public inquiries, and also an author. And being an author comes from my work as a barrister and seeing how the lack of power that so many people have in society. So with the knowledge I have as a lawyer, the idea of the books was to be able to empower people that might not work in the law, but absolutely need to understand their rights, because there are powers that be in society that will absolutely exploit the fact that you don't know your rights if you don't know your rights. So that was the genesis of the books. Like I said, the two feed in together. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So, I was going to say, so how did you, what was your journey to starting to write books? Like, why did you start writing books?
Absolutely. So I feel like, funnily enough, so I live in Manchester now, but there were a few years when I was living in London. And the time I was living in London, are you all Londoners here?
Oh, yeah.
I with pride.
Whereabouts in London were you living?
I was living in, East London.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the best places in London.
In fact, near Canary Wharf. That was the...
All right.
Yeah. But the knife crime was on the rise, and stop and search was being discussed a lot in the press. People were saying, we need to increase stop and search. And obviously, we'll all know that, especially at that time, we were 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched if we were black. Disproportionate stop and search.
When was this?
It would have been the year before the book came out. So I'm trying to remember what year The Law in 60 Seconds came out. I want to say it would have been around 2018 though. I reckon about 2018. And there were quite a few high-profile deaths that took place around that time. But yeah, Piers Morgan and the like were debating on TV, stop and search, and we know that disproportionately affects people from our demographic. And we also know that more often than not, when people are stopped and searched, it doesn't actually result in arrest. So often you have an individual left with what in some circumstances can be described as trauma, and there was no arrest at the end of it, nothing was found. As a result of that, I started something called The Law in 60 Seconds on YouTube. And the first video was a video on stop and search, and frankly, it was just to inform my friends of their rights if they were stopped and searched. Didn't intend for it to go far.
I've been a victim of stop and search.
Oh, for real?
When I was coming home from Play Centre.
Yeah.
This is a long time ago.
Play Centre.
How old were you here?
I was like 15.
Oh, okay.
So I was coming home from Play Centre. It was like summertime. I was all jolly.
Yeah.
This was Camberwell Green.
Yeah.
And then the police just pulled up and said, "All right." They kind of grabbed me up and they told me to sit in their car with my feet hanging out. They told me to take off my shoes, and they searched my shoes. And then you had the Jamaican ladies like saying, "Nah, man, them can't do that." Nah, trying to make noise and
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah,
of
yeah.
course.
and then they just let me go and said, you're free to go. And I said, why did you stop me? And they said, oh, you just matched the description of someone wearing a hoodie.
So before they stopped you, did they give you the names?
Then no, I remember I was 15, I just wanted to go home. I was 15.
Yeah.
I wasn't as clued up then. I think if it happened now, I would probably protest myself.
So you're saying they got to say names
Yeah.
of
So
people
that's an unlawful stop and search.
Was it?
Yeah. And
because they haven't said the name of who they're looking for.
So there's in my book I call it Wild R. So whenever a police officer is about to stop and search you, Wild R should go through your mind. So W isn't like each letter stands for
Wild
something.
R.
So, Wild R. Yeah. So W stands for why they want to search. They need to tell you that. I is the identity. What's their name, station, what their number and whatnot. L is the law. What law are they stopping you under? D is are you detained or not? And R is the fact that you're entitled to a receipt after the stop and search. So particularly in telling, they need to tell you why they're wanting to stop and search you and their identity.
Yeah.
And absent them doing that, it's potentially an unlawful stop and search. So
I was embarrassed, and it was at the Camberwell Green outside of McDonald's where all the main bus stops are, and I just kind of when they went, I just kind of cowered into myself and just waited for the bus.
You got traumatized.
And then the ladies were like, "Oh, do you wanna? We can help you make a complaint." And I was just like, "No, I just want to go home."
Yeah.
I just
You was young, yeah.
Yeah, I was young. I was just yeah.
No, that's happened to me still.
And then I just went up.
Yeah. When I was young, yeah. The first time I got nicked was like I was sitting on the top of the stairs. Bear in mind, there's about I want to say 4 to 5 other youths with me. Thinking back now, not even making it a race thing, but they were all white, maybe like Portuguese or whatever, European.
yeah.
Bully vans come and come straight for me, up the stairs, straight for me, nicked me. And then they've gone, I later found out it was because there was a robbery in that area. And I didn't know nothing about it. I literally just come and like 20 minutes later, maybe this happened. And yeah, they told me there was a robbery going on in that area. You fit the description. I don't know what the description was. I never got told what the description was. I never got told what the crime, the offence was. I just got nicked, sent home. Next day, came back home.
How did that change like your view of police? Did it have an impact?
You know, I don't think I've ever had like a good view of police. To be fair,
What?
just I don't know. Just,
No, can I ask why? Where that stems from? Do you feel?
that's a good question. You know, like I've never thought police is for you. If you know what I mean, like they're actually here to help you. It could be influence, ignorant influence, hearsay, hearing it from other people's experience until it actually happens to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never heard of like a police officer or someone in the force doing something positive for someone from our community. So I've got nothing to hold onto. Do you know what I mean?
There's more horror stories than there are good ones.
Wow. Do you think that's a view shared by a lot of Londoners?
I think there's something.
I've certainly seen it myself.
Yeah.
When something I mentioned when I was doing the initial press run for The Law in 60 Seconds was I was saying that when I've said that a lot of black families, when we're, I don't know, maybe going into secondary school from primary school, your parents or a family member will have a chat with you about how to navigate interactions with the police. Like someone that has a bit of authority over you, so they might say, look, it might be, stay calm. They might try and antagonize you. Just try to keep it peaceful. And I've never been on a podcast actually where everybody's we're all black. But I'll be interested to know.
Come on.
And I gotta just add, I respect so much what you guys are doing, with this, especially in relation to books as well.
We appreciate it.
No, thank you, man. Did you guys find that your family members had chats with you like that, or older people in your community?
Yeah, older cousins, older brothers. Dad, my dad's cousin died in police custody.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
there's just loads of horror stories. So those sort of conversations had to be had.
Wow. It's interesting because I'm sorry to hear that as well, man.
Do you know what the strange thing as well is as well? This is our views on police worldwide. So it's not just limited to police here. Even if you go back home to if you're from Jamaica or Nigeria or wherever, there's always this negative look towards the police, isn't it?
For who they serve, whatever purpose it is.
And maybe we've got the idea that they kind of abuse their power,
Yeah.
even if they have someone to serve, they have us to serve. They're supposed to serve and protect us, but I think there are some that they kind of abuse their power, especially depending on what country you go to, and they'll pull you over for no reason and just trying to find something that they can get from you. Maybe that stems from
The lack of infrastructure in those particular
exactly
places,
and pay and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, I'm not gonna name specific places, but you kind of get the idea. Yeah.
Nasty.
I used to work for a charity called Inquest. They're based, in fact, not even far from here. They're based in Finsbury Park. They do incredible work. And their specialism is deaths in state custody.
Wow.
So I remember when I worked there. So in fact, and if I said, yeah, I spent a few years living in London when I was working for that charity, and that was I often say, like, intellectually, I knew these things. I've heard them before. But when you're working at a charity like Inquest and the people that are throwing, I was in the casework team, so I would hear that, I would receive that first call when somebody's just found out that their loved one has, for example, died in prison or police custody. And I can't explain to you the level of grief you would hear, and then the level of powerlessness you feel when there's that mental thing about the fact that the person has died in a place where they were meant to be safe.
Yeah.
And that thing about, you know, in primary school, certainly in mine, you were taught if an issue arises, you go to the police, you go to the authorities. So who do you go to when the authorities are your problem? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting and quite striking thing you see families go through when they go through those experiences. I think that's probably informed why inquests are an area now that I spend so much of my practice, probably 80% of my practice, working within, because there's an absolute level of powerlessness that exists within it. And even if you want to fight your case, there's not necessarily funding to allow you to do so. So unless you can afford the lawyers that the other side are going to have, there's no what's called legal aid to support, or in a lot of situations, no legal aid to support you as a family member trying to get that justice or those answers, which can be very, very sad.
Yeah, I heard that there's been no prosecutions in terms of if there's ever been foul play or anything like that with people dying in police custody. There hasn't been any prosecutions in the UK.
What statistic?
Yeah.
What statistic?
So is that what led on to was it AAB's law?
OAB's law.
OAB's.
So, OAB's law, yeah.
Yeah.
So OAB died as a result of prolonged exposure to mould in his home in Rochdale. And what made that case really striking was the fact that his dad had complained so many times to the landlord saying, the mould is harming my child. And then an NHS health visitor had gone around to the property, and they, in their professional medical opinion, had written to the housing, Rochdale Borough Housing, the landlord, and said this mould could harm the child, but also his pregnant mum, because his mum had another child she was expecting. And then someone from Rochdale Borough Housing actually went around to the property for a completely separate reason. They saw the mould for themselves. At that point, the house was unfit for human habitation legally.
Wow.
Nothing was done.
Nothing was done.
Nothing was done.
Is this because they did complain about it though?
Yeah, that's the thing. They did everything right.
Yeah.
They did everything right.
So why wasn't they getting an answer in time?
Well, it's interesting because then following the case, it exposed or it shed a light on. You might have heard of Quajo, who does a brilliant work in relation to housing. Yeah, but for a long time, he's spoken about the fact that, particularly those living in social housing, they'll complain to their landlords about issues and just nothing's done. They're ignored. Yeah. And I think, again, it goes to this thing about powerlessness, because very often, of course, it depends on the situation, but if these landlords know that their tenants are maybe, they haven't got the money to take cases to court, or might not even, they might know that it's wrong, but not necessarily know that the issue breaks the law. They might think, I can't go to court anyway, I wouldn't even know how to go about that. And as a result of that, although the laws might exist to protect people, the average person's not empowered to know those laws, and nothing's done, and they can just be taken advantage of, which it's something we might talk about later, but it goes into why I think it's so important that legal education is taught in schools, because how on earth are we meant to have a fighting chance otherwise, really?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I heard they tried to blame him for showering or something like this.
Yeah, they did. They said, that's mad. Can you imagine? They said it was the family's ritual bathing habits.
That led to the
or their
child's
cooking practices.
To the mould.
But what's the craziest thing is they didn't actually ask the question of the family, how do you bathe, how do you cook?
It was just an assumption.
Was,
What in court they didn't ask?
Yeah,
Okay.
or even prior. So they never said, oh, this mold is being caused by maybe you're bathing or something like that. No, they never had that conversation.
Sounds a bit racist to me.
Well, funnily enough, there was an investigation done afterwards by, they're called the Housing Ombudsman, the Housing Ombudsman, and it showed that there was a culture of othering, that's what they called it, that existed within that organisation. So, yeah, the family certainly thought that racism played a part.
What's othering?
Othering, so that would be maybe treating others.
Oh.
It's their words. I'm trying to define the word they used, but I'll give you two examples actually that might provide a bit of context. So othering, meaning that, you know, these guys are refugees, so maybe they can be treated a certain type of way. They're other, they're not like us. But then the other thing was there were examples apparently of individuals in the organisation, so the seniors saying things to those lower down, like, oh, well, these people are lucky to have a house anyway, they're refugees. So as if to say, their complaints don't matter, they're lucky to even have a property. So I think that speaks to the culture that was existing. And these aren't my words, these are what an independent investigation has shown. So really sad, really, really sad.
Talking about terms, what does kettling mean?
Kettling, yeah. So that's in a protest context. So kettling is where, it's when the individuals might be at a protest and the police will effectively lock in or trap in protesters so they can't physically leave a certain area.
They can do that?
Yeah, well, it happens, yeah, sadly.
Didn't they do that at the protest for the universities? They
Yeah,
kettled
there's
them in there, yeah. I remember being there.
Oh, yeah. Were you in the kettle itself?
Yeah, we were in the kettle. They kept us there for about like 6-7 hours. Then after the fire started, one of my friends almost got stabbed. It was just mad.
Gosh.
You got stabbed in the kettle? That's
Is that
almost got stabbed. Yeah.
Is that the same process as, let's say, you got, do you remember when you had the let's say you're part of one group and to be protected from another group, and the police will kind of block you in so you don't blend with that. Is that a form of kettling?
Kettling is like surrounding, isn't it?
Yeah.
To box you in, basically.
This
and
is
the
it.
whole concept
But
of
I do that
boiling.
in carnival and that.
And I bet they use that excuse. Oh, we're just protecting.
Yeah, they'll have their justifications, or what they'll put out as justifications. But as you say, it can. If you imagine a kettle, a boiling pressure, and people are confined in an area, it can cause issues. On a very basic level, it can be things like, if you actually just imagine this, like 6 hours in a kettle.
Yeah.
Let's say you had enough phone charge to get to the protest. It's now getting late. You haven't got I don't know how it works in London these days, but you can't scan or tap in contactless to get home. All of a sudden, when you're in a location for a while, pressures are going to rise because you're thinking, I can't even let people know I'm here. How am I even going to get home? I haven't got Google Maps to know how to get out of this area. So you can understand why.
That's wild, I'm swinging.
But I think that's what they want you to do.
Yeah, that's
the
what
whole
they want,
purpose of it being like a
Then they
kettle,
won,
to
bro.
feel
Some would
pressure
say that, yeah,
to get
for
a result of some sort.
If you want to arrest individuals for protest or related to protest, and you can't specifically find a reason to arrest them, and then they're in a kettle and they're acting out a certain way, understandably because of the pressure, that can sometimes provide a justification for the arrest.
Like public disorder or something like that. Yeah.
So with these, so the title of, can you lift up the book again?
Sure.
Your right to. So yeah, can you give us a little overview on what that is? What you're talking about in this book? Your right to protest. The message.
Yeah.
Understand it. Use it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The book's dedicated to Awab Ishaq, and Awab's dad was the very first person to get a copy, and that was because in that case there, I really saw powerlessness. And you know, funnily enough, just when I was walking in, I know you guys were chatting about, you know, parenthood and things like that, and a lot of people that have children have said to me, there's a level of grief and pain you'll maybe only understand when you have children yourself to know this, but you're screaming out for help over your child and then you're just ignored. And that was absolute powerlessness that family were going through. And I thought, you know, I can't say this book would have necessarily helped Awab's family because the situation they went through was so desperate and dire. But I did realise that there are a lot of people that try and use their voice and they don't know the laws that underpin it and back it so that it actually has impact. There are also people that are scared to use their voice because we've of course got a new government now, but the previous government, the previous Conservative government, they really stripped away some of our, or already curtailed our rights to protest. So some people are genuinely scared to protest now because they think, well, you know, could I end up in jail? With some Just Stop Oil protesters recently got 5 years. Given, in terms of human rights, we have the right to assembly, the right to association, we have the right to protest. The fact that then, you can get those sorts of sentences.
So you have a right to protest. You have a right to assembly.
Mm-hmm.
What about if it impacts on people who are not involved? So like these people. I can't remember their names. They just sit in front of the cars and block the traffic and all this kind of stuff.
That's just stop oil.
Is that them?
That's the
Stop oil.
tactic they very often use.
Yeah. So how do they? Yeah, because that's it. Kind of boggles my mind as to like if I don't know if I was in that traffic, I'll probably get out and try and drag one.
Do you know what though? It's all because the reality is that. So historically, change in society has come about through protest, and then for government to take notice, protest has often had to be disruptive. So many of the freedoms we enjoy now, and from voting rights and all sorts, came about from protest. So it's very disruptive, sometimes very disruptive. But often the fact that we're even having conversations about these things is, whether we would know about some of these protest groups' messages otherwise, I don't know. But it's the fact that they've caused this inconvenience that then starts a conversation. And that might encourage some people to look into things and think, actually, this really is a big issue that's going on. So
Black Lives Matter. Was that just? Like, was it the way they protested? Was that just? Because it says in your book, you've got to give 6 days notice before you start protesting. That was automatic. Like after we all saw the video, next day or the day after that, everyone was active, right? What they were getting up to wasn't. For 2 questions: was it just? And secondly, because you were saying protests have gained a result. What has that gained?
That's Black Lives Matter gained. I think it started a huge conversation. So I think even in terms of stop and search, I think it was. I remember that period, and people were maybe for the first time understanding maybe some of the issues that Black people have spoken a lot about, and maybe never really been taken seriously about. So I think it did start a proper conversation. And in terms of just, it was interesting because that was of course 2020, and the lockdown restrictions were in place. So there is a restriction on protest that's in relation to public health. So strictly on law, there were serious. There was a lot of law that existed surrounding those protests. But yeah, I think they started a very important conversation actually. So I think if that was their objective, I would say they probably achieved that.
Yeah.
What a conversation.
Yeah, I think so.
Just awareness, basically.
Yeah, but I think awareness is often the first step to change. I don't think things can change absent there being awareness. I don't know if things change necessarily absent there being a bit of public pressure. And I think if there's awareness in society, that means more people maybe understand the reasons why certain groups are campaigning and are trying to apply pressure. If they then support the movement, that can bring about the change. With the Awab's Law campaign, just under 180,000 people signed a petition calling for an Awab's Law. I'm sure that made a difference in terms of why government decided to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Can we break down what the Awab's Law is for the people that don't know?
Absolutely. So, Awabishat died as a result of this prolonged exposure to mold, where his family complained frequently, and they were just ignored. So, Awab's Law is to ensure that if an issue is reported by a tenant, there are actual time limits in place that mean that within a certain amount of time, for example, so it might be 24 hours if it's an emergency repair, that landlord has to firstly acknowledge the issue and make efforts to repair the issue too. So that's so another family can't just be ignored. And if a landlord fails to do that, the tenant will then have the ability to take the landlord to court. So it puts a lot of power back in tenants' hands in a way that didn't exist previously.
What's the time frame if someone were to take a landlord to court?
The exact one is still being completely finalised, but certainly as it's been suggested, you're saying for an emergency repair, which I think is really important, is 24 hours, and then 7 days, 14 days are being discussed as well, depending on the actual issue itself. But that's the exact granular time frame is still being finalised.
So you was part of the reason why that law came about, right?
Yeah.
What was the process to getting that?
So, following Awab's death and the court case that took place, the inquest, it just came out how awful the family had been treated. And then the Manchester Evening News, and I think they always deserve such a significant shout out for how hard they worked on this, but they were really just heavy on, they wanted to do an Awab's Law. And they, so Manchester Evening News Shelter and Awab's family, represented by myself, were in very regular discussions with the then individual in charge, who was Michael Gove, who was a previous government minister, to make that happen. And I think so the Manchester Evening News hosted the petition. A lot of people, of course, signed up for that. But then I think as a result of just how outrageous what happened to Obama actually was, press across the whole country, even in Australia it was reported, there was a lot of noise about this case. And I think that all made a difference. But it taught me a lot about perhaps the blueprint to making certain types of changes. And I realised that the legal system, i.e. a court case, can be quite a powerful way in which that can be done, then followed by media, and then followed by public pressure. And it astounded me at times how easily we could just talk to government and make a difference when talking to government. The doors were just, sometimes it felt like they were open doors, but that was because of the public pressure. So something I've really started to realise is that, when people come together, the power of our collective voice is something that can be really, really quite strong.
Yeah. Fair play. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still not on protesting, but that's me personally.
But you know what's interesting? So, although the book's called Your Right to Protest, it very much appreciates that protest isn't for everyone. Some people, in terms of protest, in terms of taking to the streets, they might just be like, that doesn't fit my actual character. In no other area of my life am I vocal and shouting, holding placards.
Yeah.
So why would I do that for this? But what the book does is it breaks down so many other ways in which you can make your voice heard. So it might be how to speak to someone in authority. So let's say you're speaking to your landlord, you're speaking to a police officer. Actually, how to do that and get a good result. How to write a letter to your MP or an elected official. How to make a freedom of information request or a subject access request where you can find the information that organisations hold about you. It gives you the tools to empower yourself. And then how you choose to do that can be, up to yourselves. So of course it details your rights to protest, but then everything else in terms of using your voice and making a change. It breaks down legally the ways in which you can do that. And of course, I should add, and what happens if things go wrong? So what happens if you end up in police custody, and how long they can hold you, what your rights are in police custody? What happens if things end up going to court, and how you can even use court as an arena for protests to further, the pressure sometimes in court, how you can actually speak about your cause there. So it's not trying to advocate for any certain actions, but as I said at the start, I think law should be taught in schools. Yeah. This is just leveling the playing field and letting people know how your rights can work for you.
It's like a toolbox, isn't it?
Absolutely. Sense, yeah. I couldn't have said it for the next podcast, toolbox. I like that one. Yeah, absolutely.
In talking about protest, what's a good protest and what's a bad protest?
That's a really interesting question, because something I'm keen to try and avoid in the group is even actually expressing my personal view. Like for me, I'm giving the information, I'm giving you the law, and then it's almost not for me to judge how a person chooses to protest. Because let's say, just as a prime example, let's say as I was driving here, we put up into the North London area, someone had blocked the roads. If you asked me that question here and I was late for this podcast, I might have a certain view. And actually that's wrong. Really my job is to say, here's what the law is, how people decide to use that is in some ways up to them. It's their law. It's our law. As opposed to me trying to pass too much judgment on it exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I still wanted to answer, but sorry. Your book, The Law in 60 Seconds. I feel like there's well, for me anyway, when I read it, there was a bit of controversial stuff in there. Well, it's not controversial, but when I bring it up in conversations, I've got a lot of controversial conversations out of it.
Do you think people really understand how the law affects so much of their lives? And from the feedback that you've received from speaking to people, what are some of the big takeaways that they have?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know if people do, and I think they often only realise it when they start interfacing with the justice system, and they realise, wow, all of a sudden, my life is being changed from this system, and I feel powerless in this system. No one even taught me these rights. No one even taught me this law before I was having to engage with this. So no, I don't think they do. And I think there's also, this is something that even for me, I still kind of battle with a little bit, but I think there's this perception, we're kind of brought up to feel that the systems, the powers that be, actually have our back, that that we can trust them, and if anything goes wrong, that we can rely on our justice system, we can rely on our police officers. And these systems, firstly, are made up of human beings that are flawed. Yeah. And as a result of that, things happen this whole wrong by these systems that we're brought up to trust. I don't think people necessarily understand the importance of it, and I think they should, because given these systems are flawed, there's then a greater possibility of them being able to enter these systems and get what's rightfully theirs, as opposed to just sitting back trusting that things will be okay, and it really might not be.
I'm not gonna lie, I got one more case studies from that consent section. This one blew me away. That's why, because I didn't know.
It's a heavy weight to carry. Like, you got to be accurate and just carry the truth at all times, basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
If I rewind, just for my sake and maybe other people's listening, simple question? What is a barrister?
So the way I explain it in the simplest way is that if you, and this is to generalize, there will always be exceptions, right? But typically you have lawyers. Within the band of lawyer, you typically have solicitor and barrister. Barrister, so that's what I am. Typically, in the press, you'll see them wearing the wig and the gown. They advocate on people's behalf in court. Now, there are some types of solicitors that can also do advocacy in court. But generally speaking, it's a role that's done by barristers. And then solicitors, if you, let's say there's a loose part of the pavement and someone trips and they want to make a claim, the person they'll go to will be the solicitor. So you have some solicitors that are on the high street. You'll go there, you can walk into the office. They'll maybe advise you, tell you if you have a claim. They might even be able to liaise with the council, get things sorted for you. Then if it goes to court, like I say, some solicitors can actually represent you in court. But at that point, very often a solicitor will, they call it instruct a barrister. And that's when they bring a barrister onto the case. And they will then take it forward.
So the solicitor takes the case and then forwards it onto the barrister.
Absolutely.
And then the barrister goes in front of the judge.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain it.
Okay.
And there are even exceptions to that. So sometimes there's some barristers that are what we call direct access. So a member of the public can directly access that barrister. But to keep it simple, yes, what you just said is a very accurate representation.
So you wear the wigs and that, yeah?
I own one. I own the wig and the gown.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but for the cases I take on, particularly my inquest, I don't have to wear it. And I'm glad because I find it so uncomfortable to wear. When I look in my diary and I see that I have a day where I need to wear the wig and the gown, I dread it.
What's your views on the wig anyway? Is because that dates back to a lot colonial times or before that. Like, what's your and why do they have to wear it still in 2024? Like, what?
Yeah, there was a big debate recently about whether it should be removed because it was making barristers just appear completely out of touch. I find it really uncomfortable to wear, and I think partly because I don't even mean this in necessarily a political way. I mean it as in a really matter-of-fact way. It was not designed for me. Do you know what I mean? So when I physically put it on, I feel like I look silly because it wasn't designed for how I look in any way. So I think for some barristers, and I hear the argument. Some say that because there's a principle in the barrister rule called the cab rank rule, which is so that barristers can't pick and choose cases, which would mean that people that maybe are accused of murder or other serious offences can't find a barrister. There's a rule a bit like a cab rank whereby if you've got the skill and the money you're going to receive a fair amount of money, you have to by law take the case on effectively. And a lot of barristers would say, well, actually, we like wearing the wig and gown because it means that if we're representing someone that's done a really serious offence and something that's very unpopular, it's not like we're personally representing them. There's that level of anonymity. We don't have to fear maybe repercussion in the street. So that's an argument I've heard. But
everyone can see your face.
Well, that's what the other side will say. So that's not a reason to keep it because you can still, when the judge says Mr. Smith, and you're the barrister, then stands up. Your name's there. Your chambers is there. So
when you say this, it's so that wig was made for your head. You said, or was it just one that they had in the tuck and they just say, yeah, here's your wig, and you're just trying to balance it. It's not fitting in it. Sorry.
It doesn't feel like it fits my head. I think the point there is the fact that so we're talking. It's a very historical thing. Certainly in this country, in terms of black people at the bar, there are still not many black people at the bar. When that was designed, we weren't in mind, if that makes sense. So when I physically put it on, even this is gonna sound, but you'll all understand it. But even to this day, I'm not quite sure where it's meant to sit in relation to my hairline because I swear to you. And no one's been able to give me a clear answer because we weren't in mind when it was designed. So every single hairing you see me, sometimes it's hair.
It's that W. Bush looking thing, innit?
You're saying that you got to use it sometimes and sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Is that so? You only use it like when it's a case where you feel kind of distant from, like you don't feel in touch with Something like that.
Nah, so it depends on the actual type of hearing it is. So, for example, if you're a barrister and you've got a case in the Crown Court, so that's the more serious type of criminal offences. In that case, very often the barristers are they call it being robed. You're wearing your wig and gown. But in inquests, and just, wearing your wig and gown, you'll be standing up every time you address the judge. It's that kind of setting. Then in an inquest, you're actually sat down throughout the hearing. You're just in a normal suit. So every court has a slightly different way in which they do things.
How many courts are there?
You've been to the Old Bailey, innit?
I've never been to the Old Bailey.
Yeah,
I can't tell you the exact number of courts.
Oh, not the number of courts, but the levels of courts. So like county courts.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of offshoots as well.
Okay.
So like in a criminal law context, for example, where I'm familiar because of cases I did when I was a trainee barrister, you'll have to start with, most cases you'll never go to court. Sometimes the police can deal with things out of court matters and whatnot, but you have your magistrates court and then you have your Crown Court, and then I don't want to make this so complex and it'll get technical, but yeah, typically in the criminal law context you have your magistrates court and your Crown Court.
Quick question, coming back to the previous question I asked: is a lawyer and a solicitor the same thing?
Yeah, you can say that, yes.
Okay,
so if you're a lawyer, if I say I'm a lawyer, I could be a solicitor or I could be a barrister. Yeah.
Also, you play in between, so
a lawyer is just someone who practices law, and they could, and a solicitor and a barrister could fall under that.
Yeah, so I class lawyer as the umbrella term, and then you can be more specific by saying you're a solicitor or a barrister.
What's the most serious case you've put your wig on for? Hopefully.
I feel like, every case is serious in its own way. I'm not just saying that, but it's true. It's true. And a case you don't think is going to be serious can be a serious case. So the most significant case is, I'd say socially significant, is perhaps a Wabi Shacks.
Yeah.
But I'd say that other cases that, where maybe I maybe take a more junior role, is the COVID-19 public inquiry. Again, a more junior role, the Manchester Arena terror attack, there was an inquiry into that.
Yeah.
So they're for other reasons, very obviously very, very significant cases. But in terms of the one where it was the balance of a serious significant case and I was the person making the calls, if that makes sense, that would be a Wabi Shacks case.
For your career, you've dealt with quite a few significant cases and a lot of cases that have got a lot of publicity. In terms of when you started off, did you ever see your career going in this direction?
That's an interesting question. Yes and no. I feel like I always wanted to be a human rights barrister, and a barrister that represented those that didn't have power. So maybe I've become a bit more specific about those that didn't have power because I've now seen powerlessness so much. But I think certainly the underdog was something I always wanted to focus my attentions towards. So yes, in terms of the type of cases, but perhaps no in terms of maybe the social significance that some of them have had. I was just saying it to somebody yesterday at one of my book signing events, actually. But the type of lawyer I aspire to do could so easily have been the type you've never, ever, ever heard of, just in a quiet office, working hard, head down. Do you know what I mean? And it just so happened that, some cases have come onto my desk, if you like, that I've been able to undertake in a certain way that's led to an impact. But then I guess brings in other cases that have already that kind of significance attached to them. But yeah, I don't think I could have envisaged this, no.
You say that you want to represent people that are powerless, and I listened to another podcast that you were on, and you spoke about why that is. Do you mind elaborating on that?
Absolutely, yeah, of course. So something I mentioned at the intro of both books actually is that one of my earliest memories is my grandfather, and he was subjected to racist attacks in his home in Nottingham, where we're from. And people will be putting or an individual was putting dog feces on their car.
Crazy.
Yeah, and just leaving them feeling traumatized, victimized in their own homes. And of course, you never know and it's funny, I can look at it from different perspective now that I'm a 30-year-old man myself. So, they wouldn't have known if this was going to escalate. They didn't know why it was happening. Was it behavior they were doing? They wouldn't harm anyone, my grandparents.
And what years were this?
This would have been, I feel like I was about 8 at the time. So I was still in primary school.
2000?
Early 2000s. We're getting older, man.
Yeah. Well, it's just crazy that was happening just in the 2000s.
Well, this is it. This is it. So my granddad, he went into the garage. And I remember it so vividly as a child. And he went into the garage and he got like a piece of wood, and he literally created this placard that said, "This family will not be intimidated by a racist." And even at that young age, I could actually appreciate the significance of that. Even though I maybe didn't quite get it. And yeah, he put it outside the house and the incident stopped. It got a lot of press attention. And yeah, it stopped. And that showed me the power of standing up for yourself. And sometimes I think, what would have happened if he didn't do that? I'm sure that my grandparents' mental health would have deteriorated. There would have been consequences.
Do you feel that his action in that way of standing up for what was right is something that kind of led you into the career that you have?
I think so, to a large extent. And I think it was the fact that he did it so peacefully as well. All he did was put up a placard. And I think I realised the strength that can come from just actually standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost, in every situation is different, but sometimes you don't even need to overthink it. Just stand up for yourself, and that can make the difference. So I think that definitely played a role. And it also taught me that, because one thing my grandfather did try and do was go to the police, and for whatever reason, they didn't do anything about it. And again, that shattered this idea I had that if you have an issue, go to the police, because then it's that thing of, well, if you can't go to the police, then who do you go to? And that was the situation he found himself in. So yeah, he took matters into his own hands, and it made a difference. And I think there's a level of respect and admiration I have for him because of the way he navigated a situation where other people could have, those sorts of situations can go either way.
Could have gone left,
you know?
Lost their minds.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
In 2000,
Yeah.
Nelly was out 50 seconds.
This is
Like,
even long ago.
and this is going on in Nottingham. That's mad.
That's crazy.
So you've got the law in 60 seconds. You've got your right to protest.
Yeah.
More books. What's the next one?
We were saying.
Yeah, perhaps. It's interesting. Every time you finish writing a book, you say, "I'm never doing that again." That was such a hard process. Then you kind of forget. You do the podcast and you think, you write another one. So I'm in that stage now. I'm looking. I think, with these things, you work so hard. You've got such good relationships, and it's that thing of, well, actually, the infrastructure's there. So I wouldn't do it for the sake of it, because it is a time-consuming task. It takes a lot out of you. However,
That's what I was going to ask. How long did it take you? But when did you finish?
Well, yeah. But yeah, so I feel like if there were cases where I saw things in these cases and I thought, wow, that there's a book that can come out of that in terms of people need to know X, Y, Z, then that.
No, you're doing a big job, man. You're doing a
Thank
big
you.
job. No, seriously.
A matter of fact,
I appreciate that.
because you're working on cases and you're writing a book, you have to be conscious of what you can put in there and how much information you can put in there, right? Like,
In some ways, if it related to my case, that I probably wouldn't say anything about it, or just to err on the side of absolute caution. There's always a respect element as well. In the same way, a case might be really significant for me. I might have read the papers of a case, representing this family. They've gone through the hardest period of their life, going through court, and I might think to myself, wow, the world needs to hear about that, and things need to change. And they might think, do you know what? And this has never been a situation actually, but the reason I'd always be cautious is because they might think, yes, equally, that was the hardest moment of my life, and I don't want the world to hear about it. I want to just get over that. So it would only, whenever I've spoken about a case publicly, it's always because the family have first wanted their voice to be amplified, and then I've done what I can to help that. But it would never, ever be the other way around.
But can't you just not say their name, but speak about the case?
Yeah, potentially.
Say person A, person B, or whatever.
You certainly could. And I'd be very keen or very cautious not to identify them, do anything that could lead to them being identified. And to answer your question as well, in terms of the timing, so the law in 60 seconds, I wrote a lot of that during the COVID lockdown. And then your right to protest. Funnily enough, my publisher came to me with the idea in very, very late last year. And then I started writing it this year. And I think by about May, it was off for press. So that was a very quick turnaround. I wouldn't do that again. But, yeah, that was an intense process.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously it feels great when you see it here and it can actually make an impact, God willing.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, that's good. And this is on, one of them's on YouTube.
Yeah, so the law in 60 seconds as a concept. So even the book being called The Law in 60 Seconds, obviously it's a 300-page book, so you can't read that whole thing.
No,
in
but it's
60
concise
seconds.
and perfect. It's
broken
literally
down,
pocket.
Those laws are broken
pocket
down,
size,
Yeah, that was the goal. And the law in 60 seconds, that idea started because I realised that although I was now doing law school and understanding the law, for a lot of people, they see it as something that's just completely inaccessible. So by it being called The Law in 60 Seconds, it shows you from the get-go, this isn't going to take too much of my time to learn about. And in addition, it can't be that complicated if this concept's going to be explained to me in 60 seconds. So that's where the name The Law in 60 Seconds originated from. And yeah, as I say, it started off as a YouTube series. And I think what was striking about that is the fact that when I started it, like I say, it was on Stop and Search. Then I branched out, did a few other videos. But then people were getting in touch with me, sharing their deepest, darkest legal issues.
Wow.
And at this stage, I was just a young guy in my 20s. And I was thinking, why are people feeling so like content or confident to just share these really personal things with me? And I realized it's because there's nowhere else for them to turn to, because there is no other resource, there is no other information bank that really that really does break down your rights. So there's a massive void that exists in society in relation to this. But it was from that passion that I recognized that a book could be a really effective way to convey that information. And it's something you can keep with you. So I deal with things such as your rights if you're detained under the Mental Health Act. And, you know, let's say you're in a situation and there's just a few belongings you can keep and you're about to go into a foreign setting, have that book with you, because for a lot of things you're going to go through, that book can just give you guidance if you're on the right lines. If you're in a taxi and you feel like you're being overcharged, the book will give you guidance. It genuinely is a book I want people to just have on them, because in a lot of different situations, if I leave now and the man tries to overcharge me when I go to the shop, my right to a refund, my right, all
Tell
things.
him Christian said so.
Christians, hey. So,
But I'm saying, you've written these books. What books inspire you? What have you read?
Wow, what a question. Right now, I'm really getting into learning a lot about leaders. So, your Barack Obamas, your Nelson Mandela's, your Malcolm X, your Martin Luther
Modern
King.
leaders.
Yeah, modern and history, but maybe not too far into history. History that's almost, maybe not always within my living memory, my parents' living memory.
Okay.
What's your background, by the way?
I'm a mix of a number of different things. So Jamaica, Antigua, and Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything,
bro.
everything, man.
This is it. So, and I've been to all those places as well. Yeah. But you know, but not as a young adult. So I've been as a child, but I think now as an adult, I think there'd be a different perspective I go with. So I want to do that at some point. In fact, that's really something I want to do in the not too distant future.
When you go to visit your home nations, do you kind of have your barrister hat on, like, and I mean, let's say for example you go to Jamaica and you're thinking, oh, this doesn't look like it's done right. This, you know like that, and you comparing to like over here, and in some places you have an issue with corruption and all that kind of stuff. Or are you going there you're just leaving it at home and then you're just enjoying yourself, kind of you see what I'm trying to...
Like, are you aware of the laws in the countries you go to?
Or you're like, imagine you're an artist and you paint a picture and then you take a day off and you go and look at someone else's art and you're critical of that art and you're like that.
Yeah, I do. I get what you're saying. I feel like if I had this perception that our system here was perfect, I think I'd feel like I can go to other countries and say, but you're not even doing X, Y, Z. I don't think our system's perfect. So I think I almost go on the stance of every country has their flaws. I think it's important that countries are working to rectify those things and solve those things. And I guess the politics I'll always take with me is that those that have the least power in society, those that are most vulnerable, it's always important that we almost proactively make sure their rights are safeguarded. Because if there's a flawed system, one thing we do know is that they're the ones that are going to face the brunt of that. But yeah, I try not to pass too much judgment on other systems, to be honest. Where I can.
Fair enough.
Did you say you was coming out with another book?
Maybe one day. Not in the pipeline for now.
It might not even be a law book. It might be based on something else. Because reading about leaders, depending on how your career goes, you might write a book something completely different.
A thought I've really had of recent is the families I come across that I represent. I obviously meet them when they're going through some of the worst periods of their lives, and the whether it's little mental hacks they'll have to help them navigate through situations, I've found incredible. So I've often thought if I could almost write a book that picks out some of the key learnings I've had from clients and packages that, kind of the learnings they've had from going through an incredibly intense moment, but something that we can just use in our everyday life, would be something that's really powerful for society. I learn so much through every case I take on. So, yeah, a personal development style book could one day be...
Your publishers might be interested in that.
Yeah, profile shout.
I've got a question. Outside of work, what hobbies do you have? Like, how does work impact what you do outside, like relationships. Because I've worked in law firms before in IT. I've worked in 3 different law firms, and I know the paralegals and the solicitors there. They work long hours, and so how do you get time to do other things and enjoy life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when I started out as a pupil barrister, that's hard. It's very difficult. You're building your career, you're building your practice. Barristers are self-employed, so if nobody wants to instruct you as a barrister, quite literally you might have no money coming in. So it can be a tough to start. I think for me now, because barristers are self-employed, that also means unless I'm in court, I have full control over my days. So I might decide I want to work at 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. and have the whole day off or something, and I have the ability to do so. So I'm able to create a bit of a work-life balance that way. I think in addition, almost trying to find, my work has become part of my life. I care about what I do, and it's almost, if I could even choose a hobby, some of the cases I take on and the things I do after it would almost fall into that category sometimes. Wow. But then it's merging the two together. So let's say I have a case in Newcastle, for example. I might think, you know what, I'm going to stay for a few days after. I'm going to enjoy Newcastle as a city afterwards and then head back. So there's ways you can make it work. And I'm enjoying it. I feel like I've just started to really find that balance.
So you do put time in, you play sports or anything like that? And
well, this is what fell off. So I used to play football regularly. And then it's funny how once you break a habit, it can be hard to get in. So as of about 2-3 weeks ago, I've just started going weekly again.
Come on.
Yeah, and I'm happy about that as well.
No, you need to keep it up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Health is wealth.
Pardon?
Exactly.
Health is wealth.
This is it.
The reason why I ask is because when I think about solicitors, judges, I don't really look at them as regular people. Like you're always working. You're I'm thinking, like, what's the social life like? But you're just regular people like us. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I know that sounds a bit you know what I mean. But
I get what you mean. Yeah.
They're the ones who keep things going. The law.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just wonder. I wonder when they're not working, like, what are they doing?
Like,
are they doing the same thing as me?
Yeah.
Are they you know?
You'd be surprised how normal it is. Like you'll be. But in fact, you know, there's different types of barristers. So I say that through the lens of somebody that works in human rights. I work with people. There are some people that, you know, I went to law school with them, and they'll go into maybe commercial law, and their life might really look different. You know what I mean? From straight out of uni, they're on plus 100k salaries from the day they leave university. So there is, I guess there's, in terms of the financial side, there's probably levels to this that does change the lifestyle. But I think the vast majority, you'd be surprised at how normal lives just are for them. Yeah.
So you said in your pastime, if you could, you take on certain cases, right? We got a spitfire that we do usually at the end of every podcast. So I'm gonna start off with this. If you could pick one case out of the 3, what would it be? OJ, R. Kelly, or Diddy?
Oh my gosh.
And you know who you got to back.
Oh my gosh.
Who you backing?
Do you know what? I'll just be honest. The cases I take on, of course, there's a cab rank rule, like I say. So certain cases come, and you almost the rules are such that you have to take certain cases on if you have the requisite expertise. But for me, I don't think a case like that would ever fall on my desk. That's not a cop out as well.
It's a big cop out.
It's not a cop out. But it would never fall on my desk, man.
Because you do civil, is it civil law?
I call it it's inquest. So
okay,
loosely, but inquests are they're kind of their own beast, if that makes sense. The coroner court. So when someone dies and the circumstances aren't maybe necessarily clear, it's in those situations that I'll often find myself representing families.
So it's not murders or things of that nature?
No. That would be a criminal law.
Criminal law, yeah.
So you say you ain't got an answer for that one?
I ain't got an answer for that one.
He's very sharp with it the way
if you didn't take this path in life, what else could you see yourself doing?
Do you know what? I've always had this thing about wanting to help the underdog. So I don't know if that could have been. I used to genuinely think about politics. I think that's completely ruled out now. I think journalism. I like writing, obviously, and I did think, could it be journalism? Yeah, but it's an interesting question. I like business. You know, I like that. I like the skill of business, the creativity, how you have to use your mind. And I think in some ways, the way I might need to use my mind for a legal case is not wildly dissimilar to how an entrepreneur might have to use their mind to think, okay, how can I get this deal over the line? How can I feed my family, make money and whatnot? So I've liked that as well. But I'd probably say journalism would be the closest thing. Yeah.
Top 3 books of all time.
Ooh. Top 3 books would be 48 Laws of Power. I think it's just it opens your mind, doesn't it? Yeah.
What do you think about the 50th Law?
What's it? Oh, by 50 Cent. Yeah, I've got that at home. I can't lie to you, I didn't get into it as much as I think other people did.
Interesting.
But maybe I need to try it again now that I'm older.
Yeah.
But I found the two of them I put in a similar category. I found them very interesting reads.
What's the 50th Law?
Robert Greene linked up.
Yeah, with 50 Cent.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like it's a bolder version of 48. 48 is good for corporate, whereas I feel like 50th Law is like something that you'd use on an everyday basis. Because like the 48 is all about kind of doing things behind people's backs to get your way.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it works in corporate, whereas exactly. The 50 is kind of like, fuck your shit. You know what I'm saying? You're right in your face.
Yeah.
No, I hear it, and I think he says this at the start, Robert Greene as well. He says that even if you don't plan to use these things yourself, other people might be trying to use them against you. So it's good to just know the play. Another book is by a woman called Maria Forleo. It's a personal development book. It's called Everything is Figure-Outable. And that's this mindset that whatever issue happens or whatever you need to try and achieve, just start by saying everything is figure-outable, and then you will find a way. And that's been kind of a mindset that I've really tried to adopt following reading that. I thought it was a really good book. And honestly, the final one, partly because it's funny, you know, when you're on the podcast, your mind goes blank. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, Christian, can you think of 3 books? But the final one I think of as well is actually The Law in 60 Seconds. Not as a favourite book, but in terms of what I think the power in that, not because I wrote it, but this whole idea. It's almost like I can't on one hand say the government needs to make sure that everybody knows their legal rights, and then not actually endorse a book that says these are your legal rights, know them. So I probably say The Law in 60 Seconds in terms of impactful books people can read.
100%.
No, I think you definitely need that in your arsenal, just to know the basis of law. 100%. Top 3 authors.
Top 3 authors. Wow. Okay, cool. Robert Greene. So who wrote those books? I think the way he writes is rather phenomenal. A book I read really recently, it's his first book, I know him personally, actually Kenny Mafidon. I don't know if you've read, his name's Kenny Mafidon. He wrote a book called That Peckham Boy. But I think it talks on his life story. Really, really, really interesting read. I'm not just saying that because I know him, but I think it speaks on a lot of experiences that a lot of people, particularly growing up in London, go through and how he's come out of it. So I found that a really interesting read.
What's his name?
Kenny
Mafidon.
Imafidon. Yeah. And then I'd say finally, favourite author. Trying to think what's on my bookshelf right now. It would probably be somebody that's, you know, I spoke about the leadership side of things. I like Malcolm X, your Martin Luther King. Often there's a person that's written the book. But Malcolm X's, for example, I really enjoyed reading that when I was younger. So,
Whoever wrote that.
Yeah, you're on my list.
All right. What we got? 3 film book adaptations.
I don't watch films. I actually don't watch films.
No TV, no.
No.
I respect it. I respect it.
Brain power. Just fully focused.
Hey, I don't know, but yeah.
All right, cool. If you had 3 items on an island, you were stuck on an island, what would they be?
My smartphone, it'd be...
Like, you got no connection to no one else.
No. All right, cool. Pen, paper, 100% pen and paper.
That's 2 items already, you know?
Yeah. And I'm down for that pen and
Write
paper.
a book.
I've always had this thought that, you know, if you've got a pen and an A4 sheet of paper, there is... I'm exaggerating a little bit here. But there's nothing you can't figure out and work your way out of if you can just start writing it down. You can figure out a plan. Do pen and paper.
I was going to do the math of how big the island is. And if I jump this deep, I'll get to here.
But
I respect it.
Pen and paper can help you start that process. So 100%.
And you got thoughts in your head that you just need to put it down somewhere.
Choose the sand, innit?
Yeah. Actually, no seriousness though. It's
or a rock.
sand.
The rock.
A rock.
You know what I mean? Get some chalk or find something. and just-
Yeah, there might be ways. In fact, that's how things have been done here previously
Back
as
in
well.
the day, yeah. That paper's gonna go to waste. You gotta recycle that paper.
And actually, I should have said notepad as well, because a one sheet of paper might not last.
Yeah.
You see the thing? Yeah.
Man said pen and paper. That's two
Yeah, no,
items.
just like that. But yeah, so and the ability to write would be a huge one. And then I would say the ability to write and I'd say actually a book.
And a book. Okay.
Yeah.
What book?
I think a book that probably a fiction book as well, because let's say I need to escape this desert island.
Escapism.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to escape, yeah.
Yeah, if I'm needing to escape and I've got a fiction book, almost just being able to go into another reality might allow me to come back to my reality and have perspectives that can help me get out of the situation.
Sounds like you're going to be on that island for a long time.
Yeah. What would yours be?
You know what? I'm going to take what my man said. Some batteries, lithium batteries, so I can make fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you said you don't watch films. Do you watch true crime documentaries?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
I don't.
They're too fake for you, innit?
No. Not even.
Do you know what? I wanted to add in that question that I asked you about the OJ and that.
Menendez.
Menendez
The
brothers.
Menendez, yeah.
I thought that would be your bag, being as you're a barrister and that, and
No, but he doesn't do murder and criminal. innit? He don't do crime.
yes.
You know what? Why? Oh, yeah. I know you why.
Human rights.
Yeah.
But technically, human rights can still be a bit criminal. Like if you're talking about stuff that happens at
Oh.
The Hague and that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of a lot of the law, to be honest, is crossover. Like there's a lot of crossover. So even if someone has a legal issue, none of the legal issue isn't actually one specific thing. There's probably a lot of different things, and effectively the job of a lawyer sometimes is looking at what's the primary issue here, and that's the one we go with. So yeah, there's a lot of crossover. But I think over the years I've found where areas I enjoy the most in terms of I find value out of it, but where I can actually make the most contribution as well. And for me, it's that inquest and inquiry space that I feel allows me to do that.
What you got playing on your Spotify right now? Random.
Yeah, Spotify right now, I have a lot of... So UK rap. UK rap is the main thing. I'd say
UK drill, rap.
Yeah, UK drill as well.
Okay.
UK rap and drill. Probably more so rap, but a lot of drill as well, actually.
Is that how you get ready when you put your wig on and just
Getting state, I call it, yeah.
Get into the-
Get in the mindset whether you're at the gym. Yeah, 100%.
fair play? Okay, yeah. Fair play.
Yeah, rap and
We
drill.
listen to a lot of was it the guys in Manny?
Manchester-
0161. What of them, man?
Do you know what?
Bugsy in it.
I think he's very talented.
Bugsy's hot.
Very,
Yeah,
very
he's hard. He's cold.
And he's a very good performer live as well. I've not seen him live, but I've seen on YouTube. He
Yeah.
put once a full set of a live show, and I was very impressed. Tell her that I have seen him live. I saw him live in Nottingham.
Okay.
Yeah. Very good performer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I ain't seen him live, but I know he's good.
Yeah.
Have you come across any like big names when it comes to cases?
Yeah, but I couldn't say. I couldn't
NDAs.
say. Not even, more just lawyer, client, professional privilege and all of this stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to gloat? I hear you. I don't want to gloat. I respect it.
It's like getting that personal peek into people's lives in a way that other people aren't able to get access to. It must really change the way you see people generally.
Oh my gosh, yeah, 100%. Like I'm not to sound cliche, it's a massive honor. Like I think there are so few professions where you're able to have that, and it has to change you. And I think so even in inquests, you realize there are so many ways a person can die as well. So even see Londoners, you know, when you're you're getting the Victoria Line train, you stand right at the platform.
on the edge.
On the edge, I stand right by the wall. Do you know what I'm saying? The little things like that, because I've seen the tragedies happen. I've seen it.
What
So
just get pushed in?
all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, it changes how you see the world. Like things can go wrong, and of course you have colleagues in chambers as well. So it's not just your own experiences, but your colleagues will tell you of things where, without of course talking about a client's personal matters, they might tell you the general situation, and you just realize there are so many things that can happen. So even in terms of personal safety, there are so many things that can happen. Out of the blue, a person can unexpectedly find themselves in the maddest situation of their lives. So yeah, it definitely changes things. And you realise that think maybe being a barrister is a fortunate time to be that at an age where social media is on the rise, because you will see these perfect images that are generally put out. But I know what real life is like. Not just because I live real life and my family live real life, but I see the real life of everybody I represent as well. So I think there's a level of, I think we can all be humble because there's real life stuff that we're all going through. So yeah, I think that's one of the most valuable parts of the job, to be honest.
I met one in the gym. I met one guy that works as a crisis.
Yeah.
Basically, he just helps celebs dirt not go out there, basically. And he was just telling me how much dirt celebs have. You know what I mean? So we have a perception of them that is completely not that. When you actually meet them, it's crazy.
Yeah.
In terms of what's going on in their relationships, how they're dealing with certain things, grievances, deaths, and all of that they just don't bring out there. And we basically have a similar life, but because we see an image on screen, people idolize them.
Oh my gosh.
Which is sad, yeah.
Funnily enough, that's a powerful thing you say, man, and I completely endorse that. I used to represent a lot of individuals going for parole hearings. I did a lot of prison law, and you get what's called a dossier. So your dossier is might be 500 pages of documents that are about an individual. And a parole board hearing, just for those that might not know, is a person's effectively comes to the point in their sentence where if a panel of, they're called the parole board, if 3 individuals think that they're fit to be released, they'll actually be released. And they'll be on license, they'll still have to check in with probation and whatnot, but they'll be in the community. So when you're representing an individual going for one of those hearings, you get their 500 pages detailing everything that's happened in prison, but also things maybe in relation to their social work reports, things from their childhood. And there have been so many situations where, and of course at first you just read the offence. So you'll read an offence that sounds like very, 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 very serious. And then by the time you've read all 500 pages of their documents, very often you think, if I was born in those exact same circumstances, had those exact same challenges happen in my life, I'm not entirely sure I would be a different person. And that's humbling because, especially in, maybe even in professions like being a barrister, you can start to think it's because of you and all of these things. And of course, there's an extent to which it's your hard work that does these things. But when you've read 500 pages about one person, it's very often you'll think, wow, if I had all of that happen to me, or even to flip it, if they maybe had all of my situation, maybe they would be closer to where I am. And if I had all of theirs, maybe I'd be closer to theirs. And that's very, very humbling. Yeah.
What they call it? Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah, maybe so.
You heard of that?
I haven't.
It's a book, actually. It's a novel about 2 people that flips lifestyles. One's in poverty and one is rich and whatnot.
But from the same city, right?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
But just different.
Yeah. From the same city. Yeah, I think so.
I'd like that kind of book. I might check that out. I'd like that.
It's kind of like that film. Was it Richie Rich? I think it is. No.
My films.
You don't listen.
We have one. I think there's a film where you have one brother is
rich,
and the other one is poor.
Broke, yeah. And because they look like each other, they swap lives. So you'd have one in the other circumstances and vice versa. And then you see how they kind of live. Yeah. Kind of like what's that film of Eddie? Okay, you don't listen to watch films, but there's that film with Eddie Murphy. What's it called again? Trading Places. Yeah, where he flips life. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's just a concept of flipping lives.
What have been your main challenges?
Main challenges, I would say, are whenever you go into a case, like a new type of case for the first time, you're the most inexperienced person in the room, but you simultaneously have a lot of responsibility because you're representing a client. That dynamic when you're starting, so a lot of pupil barristers face this, can be very challenging. You might be doing a housing case, and especially if it's an area where you haven't got life experience, so you might be dealing with something to do with mortgages and stuff, and you're 22, you haven't got a mortgage yet, and you're having to represent a client, put forward a case, and even words you're reading, you're thinking, I've never seen that word before. So I think there's a lot of panic that goes behind the scenes as a pupil barrister, where you're ringing members of chambers to say, hey, what does this mean? Can you talk me through this? So I think when you're a pupil barrister, that specific stage where you have the responsibility but not yet the experience can be very challenging. I, however, think that makes you then the good barrister you go on to be, because the amount you learn about yourself, the confidence you have to develop, the ability to, maybe even have to send the text to a member of chambers at 11 at night and say, look, no, you're probably sleeping, but I really need to speak to you about X, Y, Z. The confidence to be able to do that because it's important for your client. They're all skills you develop in your pupillage. I think a lot of one that a lot of people will often talk about is of course I'm a young black barrister, you know.
Yeah.
So
Has that been challenging?
I'm gonna frame it like this. I've had so many experiences, and the experiences aren't nice, but I've had to really tell myself to not even entertain a victim mindset about it because the pressure I don't mean I have to be so careful with my words here, but the pressure I often have in court is such that I can't actually get into the headspace of allowing it to affect me. So it probably should affect me, but almost solely so I can represent my client best I can, I actually do not allow it to. So
It's bigger than you. It's bigger than you, isn't it?
pardon?
Because it's big. It's bigger than you.
There's not much I can do about it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, very often I'm mistaken for the defendant in court. So let's say when I was doing criminal law and I'd turn up.
That's crazy. What, you walk in
Yeah.
and you're in a suit?
And that's why they think I'm the defendant. It doesn't connect to that because I'm the barrister as well.
Oh, because when you go to court, if I'm
Just smart.
yeah, you have to you're just smart.
Even still,
Yeah.
You might need to just come in with a wig forever.
Through security. Off the train.
Forever. So they just know.
It's audacious. I said, oh, do you know where your barrister is?
Crazy.
And how did that make you feel at the time?
And this is the thing again. I was expecting it because it's it was our lived experience. So when I'd be going to shops when I was younger, my mum would say, "Don't put your hands in your pockets because it might look like you've stolen something." All of those things, I've had it all my life. So in some ways, it's a continuation of my actual lived experience every day as a black man.
Well, this is in London.
It's in courts across the country.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, you said you was living in London before. No?
Yeah, I lived in London for about 2 years.
Oh right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So what you're saying
Before I was
basically,
barrister.
you've
Right,
kind of grown up. You've kind of been prepared for it. You kind of know what to expect and.
Yeah. But I need to be absolutely. But I need to be so clear that doesn't stop it being so wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't minimize
Yeah.
the experience. And I suppose talking about this mindset that's worked for me, I don't even want it to have to work for other people because they're only going through it. But just chatting to you guys here, one way I've chosen to navigate it is just thinking I'm not allowing this to affect me. And maybe it actually is affecting me deep down. I don't know it just yet. Maybe. But right now when I'm representing my clients, I just can't think like that. And I've just and like I say, it's in some ways a continuation of the life experiences I have anyway. I've grown up with that.
But the fact is, you crawled so a lot of other people could run.
That's very
Do you know what I mean? You've done a lot. Obviously, I don't even think I've met any like black barristers.
There aren't that many. We all know each other. We're all the
Yeah. It's like a club. There you go.
I know them all.
There you go. Yeah. And you from London?
Yeah,
Must be, obviously.
The majority are from London. The vast
Okay.
majority. There aren't many in Manchester at all. Or to be honest, the vast majority are in London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. There
And
you
you
go.
get on with them. Like just talking about what we were talking about earlier, they're all such normal people. Like you would get on with them. You wouldn't know they're barristers.
do they all not watch movies as well?
No, they all watch. That's just a me thing that one there.
But they all wear wigs though.
Yeah, a lot of them do wear the wigs. They do wear the wigs.
No, it's been a great conversation. We're gonna wrap it up now.
So your right to protest can be found on.
Yes, Amazon, Waterstones, all good booksellers. Both books can be found. So, yeah, I would encourage people to get those copies and get empowered
Big books.
knowledge of their rights.
Is there audio
For the Law
version?
in 60 Seconds, there is the audio book as well.
And you're
Is this
in.
coming out in audio?
After chapter profile books about that one. But this one, the Law in 60 Seconds, but I actually read that one. I read that one myself. So that's the Manchester
Nice.
Nottingham accent you hear here.
Yes.
So this is that one there.
And do you wanna your Instagram, your YouTube channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So Christian Weaver 60 on Instagram, at Christian Kamali on Twitter. So Kamali is my middle name. That's Kamali, and then just my name for LinkedIn. But if you just search Christian Weaver, those addresses come up. So yeah, it'd be great to connect with people for sure.
Come on, there you have it.
Yeah.
Boom, another episode.
It's been very interesting.
Thank you.
I'm definitely gonna have these in my pocket. You know what I mean? And call up Christian if I get a ticket or something. You know what I mean? But yeah, boom. There we have it, folks. Another episode gone. Subscribe to the YouTube, the Mandem Read, Instagram, the Mandem Read. What else we got?
The man
TikTok.
TikTok,
The Mandem Read.
X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Instagram.
Should be having some
YouTube.
hoodies coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And listen out for any events coming. Boom. Pleasure.
I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you.
No, thank you.